I'm 𝗤𝗢𝗢𝗣𝗢𝗡, and I love Chicago real estate. Between showings, I stop in my favorite places, talk with local business owners, and bring their story to you. This is my Chicago.
So how long have you been open again?
8.
8 years here. And what's that journey like?
Oof. Well, I actually had the idea for Cocao and Company in August of 2001. So it was way, way before that. And put a business plan together, went out to look for funding right after 9/11.
Okay.
Not a good time on the street to be out looking for somebody to invest in your business. So I failed miserably and kept my day job and, stayed in my career for another 14 years, at which point my husband got really tired of me, wishing I could do this and said, just take our retirement money and bootstrap it.
Take the lead.
So I did. And that's, what got us to opening in May of 2015. So since then, I didn't know anything about this kind of business at all. My background's in advertising and strategy and marketing.
Okay.
So not really applicable to running a coffee and chocolate shop, right? Yeah. So I learned a lot really fast. So
What is Cocao & Co.?
So we call it a chocolate cafe. So my idea of it is sort of any kind of chocolate you want from all sorts of people, including ourselves. So we have that wall of bars with 150 bars from all over the world.
Wow, it's a lot.
All craft chocolate makers. And that's something I'm really passionate about. And we do a lot of education and chocolate tastings and things like that around that. But man doesn't live by chocolate bar alone. So we also have fabulous pastries and confections and bonbons, drinking chocolates, which were one of the top in the country, according to Food Network and, all sorts of things. So whatever your yen is that day for chocolate, you'll find it here.
When I was in Hawaii last, I took a tour of a cacao farm.
Yeah. Which one?
I don't know. I was on a big
Manoa?
island.
Was it Manoa? Big Island. I'm not sure where theirs are.
Okay.
But Manoa is a Hawaiian maker that we work with.
Okay. It was so cool to walk the grounds and then to dig into the plants and have the fresh cacao.
Yeah.
Was like, you ever had a mangosteen?
Yes.
It was kind of
Yes,
similar to a
it is.
mangosteen in terms of
Lychee in
texture and
there.
taste. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing the process from kind of soup to nuts was very interesting.
Isn't it? And most people haven't a clue, right? A lot of people don't even know chocolate is made from the seeds of a fruit.
And so can you talk through that process?
Sure.
Yeah.
First of all, though, the tree, you got to see the tree and you know how bizarre it looks,
Yes.
right? With these, Nerf
funky
ball
plant.
style. It's a very funky plant. Nerf balls, Nerf football.
any pictures or
things.
examples?
Sure, we've got over there.
Over there, okay.
Yep, and against the walls here.
Okay.
And those pods come in all different colors and shapes,
Really?
which is really cool. Yeah.
Just based on the geography?
Some is terroir affected, of course, but also genetics.
Okay.
So, yeah. So you hand harvest those pods, and what you saw, they're attached to the trunk and the major limbs of the tree. It's not like cherries dangling off a stem at the end, right? So you have to be really careful when you harvest them, particularly since they flower all year round. So right next to that pod, there's going to be a little flower. You don't want to, hit that by mistake and keep another pod from growing. So it's very labor intensive. You whack open the pod with your machete and pull it apart, and inside are those seeds with that white pulp on it. Looks like Elmer's glue to me. And that's probably what you were tasting. Yeah.
Right in.
Right.
Because I love mangosteen. It's one of my favorite things, but they're so hard to get. And I had this, this is like a substitute almost.
It can work.
Yeah.
It can work. But so the minute that pulp hits that hot, humid air, because cacao only grows 20 degrees above and below the equator, so it's all like jungle, right? The natural yeast in that air will start eating the sugar in the pulp.
Oh, immediately.
Immediately, and that starts the fermentation process. So that white stuff will drain off as it ferments, and you're left with these seed pods that are really have a hard fibrous outer thing. They're, I don't know, maybe that big. And the first step is to dry that, to get all the moisture out so you can ship them, because most makers are not located in the same place where the cacaos grow. It's changing, but for the moment, that's the case.
Is there a reason?
Typically because there's a huge investment in machinery, and that's not something those economies have been able to support. The talent and expertise has been, off-site in France or whatever.
So they create the raw material, ship it out.
That's changing though, and that's good. A lot of the people I work with are at the forefront of that change, because the more of the value chain you keep in that community, the more profit goes to the grower community.
So they're becoming vertically integrated, and they get to keep that inside, which makes perfect sense.
Yes. So it's just starting.
And everyone wants to buy something direct from the source as possible instead of dealing with middlemen.
Well, and in the part of the market I work with, there are really not very many middlemen at all.
Okay.
But
as in
still,
it's more of a like oligopoly or
no. So the power resides more with the growers than in the big chocolate model.
Okay.
And because of that, they're able to command much more than a fair trade price. So it's really lucrative if they're producing high quality beans, they're fermenting and drying appropriately, then they can get max, profit on the market for them. But if they can also, make it from bean to bar chocolate, they can maintain that whole value stream. But it's very, it's a craft, and it takes a long time to learn. And, down in Peru, for instance, people are making chocolate in Peru, but the quality of it isn't really where it needs to be.
Okay.
So that's changing. People are learning, and all that's good. But for the moment, once it's dried, you can vacuum pack it and ship it off to France or Italy or the US or wherever the chocolate maker is. And the first thing they do when they get that is roast those beans. And that is not something that is like self-evident and the same from batch to batch. It's very idiosyncratic. So
kind of like coffee?
Kind of like coffee, and honestly, I think it might even be more complex than that, but I'm not that well versed in the coffee process.
Okay.
Obviously very similar, and we do a coffee and chocolate tasting theme, but the mechanics of it, I've not visited a coffee roaster in any great detail.
I don't think anyone knows chocolate is roasted. And somewhere in the process.
Yeah, and the maker has to judge when it's done based on the look, the color, the texture, how it feels, how dry it is, the smell. It's very much an art. It's all sensory driven. And if you screw it up, 1 degree too hot, 1 minute too long, you've screwed the whole batch. So very difficult, and something you have to learn over time. So once you've done that, you can winnow off that hard fibrous pod, and you're left with the nib, which is, I don't know, about that big, looks like a coffee bean.
Yeah.
And that's what you make chocolate from. So from there, as you know, having seen this.
I love the nibs.
Yes.
That's the fun. Just having some of those around the house are great.
Yep. You can throw them in your smoothie or whatever, just nibble on them. You put that in a grinder, and there are different methods to do it, all of which will affect flavor. So the craftsman choice, again, comes into that. You grind it down, and the nib is made up about 50-50 of cocoa butter and cocoa solids. So chocolate's actually an emulsion. So you're grinding those solids down to a small enough micron to disperse it into the cocoa butter so that you don't feel it on your tongue. You can add your sugar in there, and then you have to do what's called conching. Conching. It's named for the shell, because supposedly the old equipment looked like that. I've seen that old equipment. I do not understand the analogy, but that's what it's called in the industry. It's like a big heating and stirring, vat. And volatile acids are blown off during that. Flavor changes. You can do it for a couple hours, or if you're the crazy guy I work with in Budapest, he does it for 10 days.
Okay.
So it's, again, maker's choice. And then if you're making a bar, you have to temper it, which is a heating, cooling, and stirring sequence you do over and over again to realign the fat crystals in the chocolate. So it has that nice snap and shine to the bar. And that is the process.
I'm local realtor John Graft. Check out our YouTube channel, GRAFFT Real Estate, for the largest collection of curated properties here in Chicago. Whenever you're ready to buy or sell, drop a line, let's talk. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this interview.
So how did you gain this passion, or how did this come about in your life? Because that was so much. I felt like I just took a science class.
Well, it's part of one of the classes I teach. So you had to listen to all that. I do, yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we do a lot of that, which is really fun. So, always loved chocolate. And then I was fortunate enough to work in some industries where I traveled internationally a lot for work and saw what was happening with chocolate makers and pastry in these other countries. And it was really not something you saw in the United States much at that point.
And what do you mean?
So back then, they were just starting to talk about origin chocolates, where they would make a bar from one particular origin, and recognizing that the flavors were different depending on where the cacao is grown and the varietal. That was not something that was happening here in the U.S. at any great extent back in 2001. From a pastry standpoint, the quality of the pastries, even here in the U.S. now, is a lot less than what you see in Europe. But, there are good pastry people now, finally. And nobody was doing drinking chocolate. We had hot cocoa, which is a really thin and unexciting form of drinking chocolate.
But it's like Lipton tea as opposed to real tea.
Kind of. It might even be more extreme than that, right? So I wanted to bring some of that back to the States and do something like that. So that's how I had the idea. I was in the wine industry at the time and saw a lot of parallels.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Coffee, wine, chocolate, the more I learned about chocolate. Olive oil now too, yeah. Yep. Olive oil is very interesting.
It is.
I've been tasting different olive oils, and there's this thing you look for in the back of your throat when you drink it.
Yes.
And it's totally there.
Yep.
Like every olive oil tastes different, and when you can just do a little spoonful, you can really see the difference or taste the difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. When I was in the wine industry, one of the makers I worked with produced their own olive oil, which is not that uncommon, but they were part of a consortium in Italy that uses the old methodology. 𝗦𝗧𝗦, I think, is the name of the consortium, and different makers can market their oils with the 𝗦𝗧𝗦, branding on it because it's really special. And so I got to go learn about that and see how it was done and stuff.
And what's it been like opening the shop? I mean,
crazy.
so classes,
Yep.
food and drink on site.
Yep.
What else?
Well, we're just starting now to branch out into other, other stores and venues with our product. So wholesaling our product to other people and
so that's
like
a whole other,
we're just getting started.
Budapest.
Yeah. Well, no, I buy his bars.
Okay, got it.
So yeah.
So are you creating your own Cocao & Co. brand?
We have our own brand. Yeah.
Okay.
For some of our products as well.
In the larger distribution?
Yeah. Well, small distribution, but other places besides here, and we'll eventually hope to open another location.
Okay.
So.
What would you look for in another location?
A neighborhood. Our neighbors here have been incredibly supportive, and particularly during COVID. So I think you have to be in a place where people form attachments to the businesses in their community.
Absolutely.
But that has a lot of foot traffic and pulls people in too, because you can't survive just on the neighborhood traffic. So it has to be a combo of those two things, and it's an upscale concept. So. If you're going to do things right with expensive ingredients, sadly, the prices are not, low. So it has to fit demographically in that respect.
I think Southport and Armitage right off the bat.
Southport and Armitage are two areas. Maybe Armitage is too close, but both of those are problematic. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I mean, I've thought about that, but
Southport would be better for both reasons.
In many ways, right. The problem with both those areas, and you probably know this in real estate, is because they are also sought after by national retailers.
That's absurd.
Yes, the landlords also. I mean, it would be different now. We've been in business 8 years, but I looked at both of those places, of course, when we were looking to open here. And I finally had some guy who owns he's a partner in a real estate trust that owns a ton of real estate in Southport. And he said, Kim, why would I ever lease to you when I can do a 25-year deal with a national retailer who, is not going to go out of business, can pay top dollar rent, and then adds to the value of the other properties in the area. So it is hard for independent businesses to break in. And if you time it right, what happens is the national retailers go in, and then the community says, I'm sick of all these national retailers. And so some will go out and transition, and then they'll be looking for the independent retailers. So it's a timing issue to be able to afford that kind of rent.
I think you see that in the West Loop. It's like, it was such a hot area. And now it's kind of like Disney World. You're like, okay, there's enough corporations here.
Exactly. It's the same as everywhere else.
Characters just coming out, being pulled and dying inside.
Yeah.
What are the products that you sell here? I see a lot of things, and I'd like to get a deeper dive on what they are.
So we have a full espresso bar. So, coffee drinks, tea drinks, matcha, all that. Our drinking chocolates, which we're famous for, and we have at any one time 6 to 9 of them.
So that's a hot chocolate.
Yes. Drinking chocolate is different. Drinking chocolate is made from full bean cacao, so it's like chopping a bar up, if you will.
Okay.
And that allows you to have that natural cocoa butter in it, so it's much richer and better mouthfeel. Hot cocoa is just made from cocoa powder, so very different. Then of course we have some food items too, but those are sort of a limited thing. In terms of other chocolate things, we have confections.
I've been watching those since we've been sitting. Yeah.
They're really good. So we have all those confections. We have bonbons.
What are those?
Bonbons are little chocolate. So it's a hard chocolate shell with a soft ganache inside, different flavors. It's like,
Those are
candy.
very pretty.
Right. That's what you get for Valentine's Day, that kind of thing.
Okay. What's a box of those worth for?
Well, they're $3 each, so it depends on the size that you get. Yeah, they're hand poured, hand painted, hand filled.
I mean,
they are. They're like little gems.
Yes, there's lots of magnets for your eyes in this room, but that was the first thing I noticed when I walked in.
Thank you. And then, we do lots of pastries. So this is obviously for St. Patty's Day. We have the pots of gold, which are like a little candy bar in a pot of gold. It's got a little hazelnut crispy stuff and stuff. Matcha, Oreo cookies, shamrock cookies. Yeah, matcha buttercream.
So this cookie looks so different.
Yeah.
What's different about the cookie itself?
So it's there's a special kind of cocoa powder that yields that black look like an Oreo cookie.
It's not just black. It's like it's very deep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then grasshopper bars over there, which are my weakness. So it's like a graham and cookie crust with a peppermint buttercream and then a chocolate ganache top. So those are just some of the things. Here's some cute little bonbons we're doing. For a 4-leaf clover bonbons. Yep.
These are very pretty.
Yep. And they have Irish whiskey ganache in there.
Oh, that's fun.
Yep.
Where do you make these?
So we have a kitchen off-site. There's no kitchen room here. We bake things up here like cookies and biscotti and granola bars on a tiny little oven on the back counter.
Okay, like speed oven.
So we are really cramped for space.
Okay.
And we're hoping to find a kitchen partner. So
that's got to be a hard part to operate, the separate kitchen and just managing all of that.
yeah, it is.
The starting a business in this neighborhood has got to be so overwhelming. Have you ever started a business before?
I have, but not a food business like this.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And these are shelf stable, but right? Are they sort of, kind of?
Yeah. I mean, certainly the pastries aren't. Those we go through every day, but the chocolate's a little more so. But, it's been the first night we were here, we were broken into.
What?
Yeah. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what year was that?
2015.
2015.
Yep.
How long did it take you from really starting to take this seriously to opening the doors?
Well, 14 years between when I went out to look for funding the first time around and when I actually then opened the doors. Yeah.
And then, so you decide, when your husband said, let's bootstrap this, then how long until you open the doors?
Well, we signed a lease Christmas Eve of 2014 and we opened early May of 2015.
Okay.
So.
It's not too bad.
No.
For permits, build out, everything, yeah.
Yeah. It was a little easier back then.
I bet.
So, and cheaper. Much cheaper. So.
What's it been like evolving in this neighborhood? You mentioned the neighborhood support and everything like that. I mean, how's that been as a business owner?
The neighborhood has changed. This, couple of blocks here have, lost a lot of businesses. So during COVID, the loss of Treasure Island, somehow we've managed to continue to grow, even though the draw of the other businesses in the area is probably less than when I first moved in.
That could be the reason. I mean, because
Maybe.
Right, there's fewer places on the block. You stand
No, they
out
weren't
more.
competitors.
Even if they're not competitors, it's like, I mean, you may reduce your foot traffic, but you stand out more.
Maybe. I don't know. I think we've had to work harder to pull people in from other neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
But, we have regulars and they have gone out of their way to make sure that they are always there for us, which is great.
How do you create these recipes?
It depends. A lot of recipes are recipes that I created. I'm not a pastry chef. I'm a home cook. And then we're working with a pastry chef now, and we can brainstorm and come up with things together.
How did you find that person?
Friend of a friend.
And what's that like working with someone to get the desired effect you're looking for?
So far, it's been great. So.
Do you focus a lot when you're doing that process? Is there a huge focus on the ingredients, I imagine?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the focus is on taste, and that is driven, obviously, by ingredients. Our milk is from a local sustainable dairy, 𝗙𝗢𝗢𝗣𝗡𝗥 Farms. It's pasteurized but not homogenized, so it's a real pain in the neck for the baristas to work with, but the flavor is good, and their agricultural model is regenerative, so I'm very supportive of that.
So you have that, is that the milk that you add to your coffee?
It's what we use behind the espresso
really
bar.
nice.
Yep. And our butters are high quality butters from local places too, and things like that. So there really aren't local chocolate makers, nor can you get chocolate grown locally, of course. So that's a little tougher, but where we can, and we do. Before I came here, one of the things I did sort of on the side was help found an angel investor network that is rebuilding the local food system.
Okay.
And I'm not involved anymore because this obviously sucks up all my time. But I like to be supportive where I can because I really believe in that. And that's one reason I only work with small chocolate makers instead of any big chocolate, because their agricultural models are really destructive.
Go into that.
So they tend to approach growing cacao as a monoculture, which is not what the tree's an under canopy rainforest tree. When you cut a swath of the rainforest down and plant it in, high density rows and stuff, it stresses the plant. So you got to use a lot of chemicals to ward off pests and disease and all that sort of stuff. So, right there, that's not good. It extracts a lot of the nutrients from the soil, so that over time you have to leave that plot and go to another one. So that's not very good. And depending on where it's grown, a big chocolate is, I think, unwittingly, or not because they choose to, but purchasing stuff that is grown with child and slave labor.
Okay.
So I steer clear of the parts of the world where that occurs, and I have to know my supply chain really well and understand the transparency so that I can be sure not to participate in those things.
When you said earlier that it grows year-round, I didn't realize that. It made me immediately think of monocropping. And I always think of negativity with monocropping. And when you just said monoagriculture, it made me think, okay, so there's a difference. So they're raising that land and then planting these trees, but not circulating the crops. Is that right?
Mostly not, no. But if it grows the way it is naturally as an understory tree, it's sort of one here, one there, and it's a much more complicated agroforestry system.
Yeah.
So maybe a palm oil also coming off that land, which isn't necessarily agriculturally great, but Peru in Vietnam, for instance, is growing them with coconut trees and kumquat trees and other plants sort of interspersed.
Are they planting them with that in mind, or
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we draw a lot of cacao that is wild cacao too, so that just is wherever it happens. So
Interesting. Do you ever go and visit these sites?
I haven't had much opportunity to do that.
Especially as of late.
Exactly. I did a lot more of that before I opened the place. So
What's next?
I don't know.
Just say Patty's Day?
Yeah, right. Kind of looking at the near term, and then Easter. We just did a photo shoot for Easter yesterday, so it'll be really fun. The stuff that we'll have for that.
Thank you for taking the time out to do this. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
it. The grotado was great. I hope to try some of the chocolate.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.